The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the massive penthouse, casting long shadows across Italian marble floors. Raj Kumar stood there, coffee cup in hand, watching the city wake up below him. At 45, he had everything money could buy, but the vast space around him felt emptier with each passing day. His phone buzzed. Another message from his assistant about the upcoming board meeting. Running a tech empire worth billions kept him busy, kept his mind off the hollow feeling that had taken root in his chest 10 years ago. That's when he lost Priya, his wife, in a car accident that shattered his world and turned his heart to stone. Mr. Kumar, his house manager, called from the doorway, "Your schedule for today." Raj nodded without turning around. Another day of meetings, decisions worth millions, and dinner alone. He straightened his designer suit, a habit that had become almost mechanical over the years. The elevator ride down his private shaft took exactly 47 seconds. He'd counted them every morning for the past decade. The lobby of his building gleamed with luxury, doorman bowing slightly as he passed. His driver waited with the car door open, right on schedule. But today, something made him pause. "I'll walk," he told the surprised driver. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the unusually crisp autumn air, or maybe it was just the suffocating routine finally getting to him. The streets of Mumbai were already buzzing with life. Street vendors called out their wares, office workers hurried past with their phones pressed to their ears, and somewhere a child laughed. Raj walked, feeling strangely out of place in his perfect suit among the regular people living their regular lives. He stopped at a small coffee shop, not his usual sleek, overpriced cafe, but a cozy corner place with mismatched chairs and the smell of freshly baked cookies in the air. The young man behind the counter didn't recognize him, didn't treat him any differently than the college students and office workers who filled the space. "Just black coffee," Raj said, and for the first time in years he added, "Please." While waiting, his eyes wandered to the wall covered in local artwork. Simple paintings of city life, nothing like the expensive pieces hanging in his penthouse. But these had something his collection lacked: life, emotion, soul. A group of schoolchildren rushed past the window, their laughter carrying through the glass. He remembered Priya's dream of having kids, a dream they'd put off because he was too busy building his empire. Now all he had were cold offices and emptier rooms. His coffee arrived in a chipped mug with a small cookie on the side. "On the house," the barista said with a genuine smile. Such a simple gesture, but it caught him off guard. When was the last time someone had given him something without expecting anything in return? Raj sat in a worn armchair by the window, watching the world go by. A young couple shared a sandwich, giggling over some private joke. An old man read his newspaper, nodding off every few minutes. A street artist set up his easel outside, capturing the morning scene with quick, confident strokes. His phone buzzed again. Emails, meetings, decisions waiting. But for the first time in 10 years, Raj Kumar, the man who could buy anything, felt something stir in his chest. A longing for something his billions couldn't buy: connection, warmth, life. He looked down at the chipped mug and smiled slightly. Maybe it was time to step out of his carefully controlled world. Maybe it was time to learn how to live again, not just exist. As he stood to leave, he dropped a generous tip in the jar, not because he was a billionaire, but because the simple coffee in a chipped mug had given him something priceless: hope. Walking back into the sunshine, Raj didn't notice the admiring glances or whispers of recognition. Instead, he noticed the flower seller's bright smile, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, and the sound of pigeons cooing in the park. For the first time in a decade, he felt awake, truly awake. His empire could wait. Today, Raj Kumar, the man who had everything, decided to search for the one thing his money couldn't buy: a reason to feel again. The next morning, Raj found himself drawn back to the same coffee shop. Something about its warmth had stayed with him through another lonely night in his penthouse. This time, he left his driver at home and walked the busy streets, breathing in the morning air that smelled of hope and possibility. The coffee shop was busier today, full of the morning rush. He stood in line, watching people hurry about their lives, when chaos erupted behind him. A loud crash, followed by gasps, made him turn around. "Oh no, oh no." A young woman was on her knees, scrambling to gather art supplies that had scattered across the floor. Paintbrushes rolled in every direction, and sheets of paper fluttered like autumn leaves. Without thinking, Raj knelt down to help her. "I'm so sorry," she said, not looking up as she reached for a fallen palette. "I'm running late for my art therapy class, and I wasn't watching where I was going." "It's all right," Raj said softly, picking up a brush that had rolled near his foot. Their hands met as they both reached for the same watercolor set, and she finally looked up. Her eyes widened with recognition, but not in the usual way people reacted to him. "You're the man from yesterday," she said. "The one who left the big tip. I'm Anita." Her smile was genuine, without a trace of the artificial warmth he was used to from people who knew his worth. Raj found himself smiling back. "You noticed?" "I work here part-time," she explained, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "The morning shift helps pay for my art therapy programs." She paused, looking at the brush in his hand. "You know what? Keep it. Consider it a thank you for helping me clean up this mess." Before Raj could protest, she had pressed the brush into his palm. It was a simple thing, worn from use, but something about it felt significant. "I don't paint," he said. "Everyone can paint," Anita replied, her eyes twinkling. "Some of us just forget how." She stood up, balancing her recovered supplies in her arms. "The real question is, are you brave enough to try?" For the first time in years, Raj felt challenged in a way that had nothing to do with business deals or profit margins. "I haven't been brave in a long time," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. Anita adjusted her bag and gave him another warm smile. "Well, Mr. Coffee Shop Tipper, if you ever want to be brave again, I teach art therapy classes at the community center on Oak Street. Everyone's welcome, even billionaires who think they can't paint." With that, she was gone, leaving Raj standing there with a paintbrush in his hand and an unfamiliar feeling in his chest. He looked down at the brush, its bristles slightly frayed but still sturdy. Like him, perhaps it had more life left in it than anyone suspected. Throughout his meetings that day, Raj found his mind wandering to the paintbrush sitting in his desk drawer. He thought about Anita's words, about being brave enough to try something new. When was the last time he created something just for the joy of it? That evening, instead of heading straight home, he asked his driver to stop at an art supply store. The young clerk looked surprised to see a man in a $1,000 suit browsing watercolor sets, but helped him select basic supplies with enthusiasm. Back in his penthouse, Raj stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows where he usually contemplated business strategies. Tonight, he set up the watercolor paper on a makeshift easel, holding the worn brush Anita had given him. The city lights twinkled below, and for the first time, he saw them not as a symbol of his success, but as points of light waiting to be captured on paper. His first attempts were messy, childlike. But as the night wore on, something changed. The act of creating, of making mistakes and trying again, awakened something in him. He wasn't just the billionaire tech mogul anymore. He was simply a man learning to see the world through new eyes. As he finally went to bed, the paintbrush carefully cleaned and dried, Raj realized he'd made a decision. Tomorrow, he would find that community center on Oak Street. Tomorrow, he would be brave. The community center on Oak Street looked nothing like the sleek buildings Raj usually frequented. Its walls were painted in cheerful yellows and blues, decorated with children's artwork. He stood outside for several minutes, his hand clutching the one paintbrush Anita had given him, before finding the courage to walk in. Laughter echoed down the hallway, leading him to a sunlit room where Anita was setting up easels. Children's paintings dried on a clothesline strung across one wall, each one telling its own story of hope and healing. "You came," Anita said, genuine surprise and warmth in her voice. She was wearing paint-splattered overalls over a simple t-shirt, looking nothing like the polished people who usually surrounded him. "I was beginning to think the brave billionaire was just a coffee shop myth." "I've been practicing," Raj admitted, showing her his attempts from the night before. "They were clumsy but honest, though I'm not sure I'm ready for an audience." Anita studied his paintings with serious attention. "These are perfect," she said finally. "Perfect? They look like a child's work." "Exactly." She smiled, touching one of the watercolors gently. "They're honest. That's where healing begins." Before Raj could respond, small voices filled the room. 5 children entered, each carrying their own art supplies. They looked at Raj curiously, but without the usual recognition he was used to. "Everyone," Anita announced, "we have a new friend joining us today. This is Raj, and like all of us, he's here to learn how to speak through colors." A small girl with bright eyes tugged at his sleeve. "You can sit next to me," she offered. "I'm Ritu. I'm painting my dreams today." And just like that, Raj found himself seated at a small table, surrounded by children who saw him not as a billionaire, but simply as another soul learning to express himself through art. The next 2 hours changed something in him. He watched as Anita worked with each child, her gentle guidance helping them pour their feelings onto paper. Some painted their fears, others their hopes. Ritu's dreams emerged as a riot of butterflies and rainbow-colored clouds. "Art isn't about being perfect," Anita explained as she helped a young boy mix colors. "It's about being true. Every stroke tells part of your story." Raj found himself painting the sunrise he'd watched so many times from his penthouse, but this time he wasn't alone in the picture. Small figures filled the foreground: the coffee shop barista, the flower seller, the children in this room, and Anita, all bringing life to his formerly solitary world. As the session ended and the children left, Raj stayed behind, helping Anita clean brushes and organize supplies. "These children," he said quietly, "they've been through so much, haven't they?" Anita nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "Each one has faced their own storms. Art gives them a way to express what they can't say in words. It helps them heal." "Like you're helping me heal," Raj said, the words surprising even himself. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the walls he built around his heart cracked just a little more. Anita didn't look away. "We're all healing from something," she said gently. "The brave part is letting others help us through it." Over the next few weeks, Raj found himself returning to the community center regularly. His assistant was baffled by his new schedule, but he didn't care. In that sunlit room, watching Anita work on magic with the children, he was learning to feel again. He brought new art supplies for the center, but not in grand gestures that would draw attention. Instead, they appeared quietly: fresh watercolors here, new brushes there. Anita noticed but never mentioned it, understanding that for Raj, this was about more than money. One afternoon, as they were putting away easels, Anita showed him a painting she'd been working on. It was the coffee shop where they'd first met, but she'd captured something he hadn't seen before: the way light played through the windows, the warmth in people's faces, the sense of possibility hanging in the air. "This is how I saw you that first morning," she explained. "Not as the billionaire everyone talks about, but as someone looking for their colors again." Raj touched the painting gently, seeing himself through her eyes. "I thought I'd forgotten how to see beauty in simple things," he admitted. "I thought I'd forgotten how to feel anything at all." "And now?" Anita asked softly. Looking at her, surrounded by the artwork of healing hearts, Raj smiled. "Now I'm remembering. One brush stroke at a time." The morning newspaper changed everything. Raj stared at the front page photo of himself and Anita leaving the community center, the headline screaming, "Tech Billionaire's Secret Love Affair with Art Teacher." His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. In the peaceful world they'd created with paintbrushes and children's laughter, he'd forgotten how cruel the outside world could be. The article painted their relationship in harsh strokes, questioning Anita's motives and digging into her simple background. At the office, his board members waited in the conference room, their faces grave. "This is a PR nightmare," his senior advisor said, sliding more newspapers across the table. "Our investors are concerned. Who is this woman really? What does she want?" "She wants nothing," Raj said firmly, but they weren't listening. "We've discovered she runs this small art therapy program," another board member continued. "No proper credentials, operating on donations. It looks suspicious, Raj. Why would someone like you? Someone like me?" Raj's voice cut through the room like steel. "You mean someone who's forgotten how to live? Someone who needed reminding that success isn't measured by stock prices." But the damage was already spreading. At the community center, reporters camped outside, frightening away the children who came for art therapy. Anita tried to shield them, but their safe space had been invaded. "Maybe we should take a break," Anita suggested one evening, her eyes tired from dealing with constant phone calls and uninvited questions. "Until things calm down. The children need their space back." No, Raj said, taking her paint-stained hands in his. Running away isn't the answer. I've spent 10 years running. That night, he couldn't sleep. The city lights twinkled below his penthouse as usual, but now they seemed to mock him. He picked up his paintbrush, the same one Anita had given him that first day, and began to paint. Hours later, his phone rang. It was Ritu's mother. The little girl hadn't spoken a word since the art therapy session stopped. The reporters had scared her so badly that she refused to leave their house. Something broke inside Raj. The world he'd built with money and power suddenly felt meaningless compared to a child's silenced voice. The next morning, he walked into his board meeting with paint still under his fingernails. "I'm calling a press conference," he announced, "but not about what you think." His PR team scrambled to arrange it, though they couldn't understand why he insisted on holding it at the community center. The media arrived expecting a scandal, but found something else entirely. Raj stood at a simple easel, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Behind him, the walls were covered with children's artwork. 10 years ago, he began, picking up a brush, I lost my wife and with her, my ability to see beauty in the world. I built an empire to fill the void, but it didn't work. He started painting as he spoke, his strokes confident now after weeks of practice. Then I met someone who taught me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in the smile of a child who's found their voice through art. It's in the courage to be vulnerable. It's in second chances. The cameras flashed as he finished his painting. A simple scene of the coffee shop where it all began. This art therapy center helps children heal from trauma. It helped me remember how to feel. And if anyone wants to question that, they'll have to go through me. In the back of the room, Anita watched with tears in her eyes. She hadn't known he planned this. Around her, the children who'd been afraid to come back peeked out from behind their parents, pointing at their artwork on the walls. Later that evening, after the reporters had left, Raj and Anita sat among scattered art supplies. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes, I did," he replied. "For Ritu, for all the children, for you, for me." He picked up a fresh canvas. "Now, shall we paint something together?" Little did they know, the video of his press conference was going viral. People weren't sharing it for the scandal they'd expected, but for the sight of a billionaire finding his humanity through art and love. The next day, the community center received more donations than it had in the past year. Parents called asking about art therapy sessions. Even some of Raj's board members sheepishly inquired about adult classes. But for Raj and Anita, the most beautiful moment came when Ritu returned, clutching her paintbrush like a magic wand. "I had a new dream," she announced, setting up her easel. "I dreamed everyone in the whole world was painting their feelings, and nobody was sad anymore." Raj looked at Anita, both of them understanding that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest brush strokes. The complications hadn't disappeared, but they'd chosen to face them with colors rather than fear, with love rather than retreat. A letter from the city council arrived at the community center one rainy morning. The building had been sold to developers. They had 30 days to vacate. Anita's hands trembled as she read the notice again and again, her heart sinking with each word. When Raj arrived for their usual afternoon session, he found her sitting among the children's artwork, trying to hide her tears. "We're losing everything," she whispered, showing him the letter. "Where will the children go? This is their safe space." Raj's first instinct was simple: buy the building. One phone call, one signature, problem solved. But as he reached for his phone, he remembered something Priya had told him long ago. "Money can't heal every wound, my love. Some things need time and understanding." "Tell me about her," Anita said softly, noticing his hesitation. "Your wife. You never talk about her." The question caught him off guard. In the warmth of their growing relationship, he'd kept Priya's memory carefully wrapped away, afraid that opening that door would spoil everything. But looking at Anita's gentle eyes, he found the courage to begin. "She was an artist too," he said, sitting down beside Anita. "She used to say that life was like a blank canvas, scary at first, but full of possibilities." He pulled out his wallet and unfolded a worn photograph. This was her last painting. The photo showed an unfinished canvas, a family scene with empty spaces where children would have been. "We were always going to have kids, after the next big deal, after the company went public, after. but time ran out. Anita took his hand, her fingers warm against his. She would be proud of you now, she said, seeing you here, helping these children find their voice through art. Would she? Rage's voice cracked. Sometimes I wonder if I'm betraying her memory by feeling happy again, by falling in. He stopped, the words stuck in his throat. By falling in love. Anita finished gently. Love isn't a betrayal, Rage. It's a gift. And sometimes it comes wrapped in unexpected packages, like a worn paintbrush in a coffee shop. A knock interrupted them. Little Ritu stood in the doorway, clutching a painting. I made this for you, she said, running to Anita. It showed 3 figures holding hands, Ritu, Anita, and Raj, surrounded by butterflies and stars. Looking at the child's artwork, Raj felt something shift inside him. We won't lose the center, he declared. But this time, it wasn't about throwing money at the problem. We'll fight for it the right way. Over the next few weeks, they organized an art exhibition featuring work from all the children who'd found healing at the center. Each piece told a story of transformation, of nightmares turned into dreams, of fears faced and overcome. The local media came, but not for scandal this time. They captured the stories of parents whose children had found their voice through art therapy. Business leaders who'd criticized Raj's involvement now stood moved by the children's artwork. One painting particularly caught everyone's attention, Raj and Anita's collaborative piece. They'd worked on it together, blending their styles. It showed the community center, but not just as a building. It was a lighthouse, its beacon made of paintbrushes and hope, guiding lost souls home. This is what Priya would have wanted, Raj realized, watching children proudly explain their artwork to visitors. Not just success, but purpose. Not just wealth, but impact. The exhibition raised awareness and support, but more importantly, it showed the city council the true value of the center. Other buildings could house luxury apartments, but this space held something priceless, the dreams and healing of countless children. Late that night, after everyone had left, Raj and Anita sat surrounded by the artwork. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For helping me see that loving again doesn't mean forgetting. For showing me that healing isn't about erasing the past, but about painting a new future over it, letting the old colors show through in just the right places. Anita leaned her head on his shoulder, their hands intertwined, paint-stained fingers fitting perfectly together. Outside, the rain had stopped, and moonlight filtered through the windows, casting gentle shadows on the walls covered with children's dreams. Sometimes, Anita mused, the biggest masterpieces come from our deepest wounds. Look at all these paintings, each one a story of healing, of hope. Raj looked around the room, seeing it through new eyes. Every artwork, every child's struggle and triumph, every moment shared with Anita, they were all part of a larger canvas, one that Priya had started and life had continued to paint. In that moment, surrounded by art and love both old and new, Raj finally understood. Hearts, like canvases, have infinite space for love. You don't have to erase one picture to paint another. You just have to be brave enough to pick up the brush and continue the story. The morning Raj walked into his board meeting, his decision was already made. The members sat around the polished conference table, tablets displaying the latest company reports. But for once, Raj wasn't interested in profit margins or stock prices. I'm stepping down as CEO, he announced quietly. The room erupted in chaos, but he remained calm, his hand touching the paintbrush in his pocket, his talisman of change. This is about that art teacher, isn't it? His senior advisor demanded. Think about what you're throwing away. The company needs you. Raj smiled, remembering Ritu's latest painting of a bird breaking free from its cage. No, he said. The company needs someone who still believes that success is measured only in dollars. I'm not that person anymore. Back at the community center, Anita was helping a young boy mix colors for his painting. She looked up when Raj entered, immediately sensing something was different. What happened? He took her paint-stained hands in his. I've been thinking about what really matters. About what makes a life worth living. Raj, she interrupted, pulling away slightly. I never wanted you to change your life for me. Your company, your success, it's part of who you are. No, he said gently. It was part of who I was hiding behind. Remember that first day in the coffee shop? I was a man who had everything except the courage to feel. You and these children taught me that real success isn't in boardrooms, it's in having the bravery to follow your heart. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. I've set up a foundation, not just for this center, but to establish art therapy programs across the country. Every child deserving a chance to heal through art. Anita's eyes widened as she looked at the plans. This is incredible. But Raj, you can't just give up everything you've built. I'm not giving up, he smiled. I'm building something new, something that matters more than quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. But, he paused, suddenly uncertain, I need a partner. Someone who understands the healing power of art. Someone who sees the person behind the Billionaire label. Before Anita could respond, they heard sniffling from the doorway. Little Ritu stood there, wiping tears from her eyes. Are you leaving us? She asked Anita fearfully. Anita knelt down beside her. No, sweetheart. Actually, we might be able to help even more children like you. But she looked up at Raj. I need to think about it. Big changes need careful thought. That evening, Anita sat alone in her small apartment, surrounded by her own paintings. They told the story of her journey, from struggling art student to finding her purpose, helping children heal through creativity. Could she maintain that authenticity while stepping into Raj's world? Her phone buzzed with messages from her family, concerned about the news of Raj's resignation. Are you sure about him? They asked. What if he's just going through a phase? She picked up her latest painting, a scene of the community center with children's laughter captured in bright colors. In the corner, she painted Raj teaching little Ritu how to mix watercolors, the joy on both their faces real and pure. The next morning, she arrived early at the center to find Raj already there, sitting on the floor with paint supplies spread around him. He was helping a new child, a quiet boy who hadn't spoken since losing his mother. Sometimes, Raj was saying gently, when words are too hard, colors can speak for us. See? Red for anger, blue for sadness, yellow for hope. The boy picked up a brush with trembling fingers and began to paint. His artwork was chaotic, full of dark swirls and sharp lines, but as he worked, his shoulders relaxed slightly. Watching them, Anita understood something important. Raj hadn't changed, he'd simply found his way back to his true self. The man who'd once built an empire of technology was now helping build bridges of healing, one brushstroke at a time. Yes, she said softly. Raj looked up, hope in his eyes. Yes. Yes to being partners, in everything. But on one condition. She sat down beside them, picking up a brush. We keep teaching classes ourselves. No matter how big the foundation grows, we stay connected to why we started. The boy looked up from his painting, offering them his first tiny smile in weeks. Raj touched the worn paintbrush in his pocket, the one that had started everything, and felt his heart swell with joy. Always, he promised. After all, every masterpiece begins with a single brushstroke and a brave heart willing to try. Together, they watched the morning sun paint golden strokes across the classroom floor, knowing that their greatest artwork, their shared future, was just beginning. 1 year later, the community center had transformed into something magical. Colorful murals decorated its walls, each telling a story of healing and hope. The once small art therapy program had blossomed into the Kuma Metta Foundation for Arts and Healing, but its heart remained the same. On this particular morning, Raj stood in the doorway of their flagship center, watching Anita teach a group of children. She wore her usual paint-splattered apron, her hair tied back loosely as she helped a young girl express her feelings through color. Remember, Anita was saying, there are no mistakes in art, only new directions. Raj smiled, thinking how those words had changed his own life. His phone buzzed. Another success story from their newest center in Bangalore. They'd opened 5 centers across India now, each one bringing art therapy to children who needed it most. Uncle Raj. Ritu called out, now a confident 8-year-old. Come see my new painting. He joined her at her easel, where she'd created a vibrant scene of the center's annual art festival. Look, she pointed proudly, I painted everyone. Even Mrs. Pryor watching from heaven. Raj's heart warmed at the small figure she'd painted among the clouds, holding a paintbrush like a magic wand. Anita squeezed his hand gently, understanding the moment's significance. Later that afternoon, they sat in their shared office, a cozy space filled with artwork from children across all their centers. Did you ever imagine this? Anita asked, sorting through letters from parents sharing their children's progress. Never, Raj admitted, looking at the photo wall they'd created. It showed their journey. The original coffee shop where they met, their first art therapy session together, the day they saved the center, and countless moments of children finding their voice through art. The quiet boy who hadn't spoken after losing his mother now led art sessions for other grieving children. A teenager who'd struggled with anxiety had just won a national art competition. Each success story was a brushstroke in their larger masterpiece. "We have a surprise for you both," called a voice from the doorway. Their staff and students had gathered, holding a large canvas covered with a sheet. When they unveiled it, Raj and Anita gasped. It was a collaborative piece created by every child and adult who'd been touched by their program. In the center was the one paintbrush that had started it all, the one Anita had given Raj that fateful morning. "You taught us that love is like art," Ritu announced, reading from a card they'd all signed. "It doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful." Raj looked at Anita, remembering how far they'd come. He was no longer the lonely billionaire trapped in his tower of success, and she was no longer the struggling art teacher fighting to keep her program alive. Together, they'd created something greater than either could have imagined. That evening, they walked to their old coffee shop, now a regular stop in their daily routine. The same mismatched chairs and warm cookie smell welcomed them. The barista, who'd witnessed their story from the beginning, served their usual orders with a knowing smile. "I still have your first painting," Anita said, sipping her coffee. "The one of the city lights seen through your penthouse window. It's beautiful in its imperfection." "Like us," Raj replied, thinking of their unconventional love story. "You know, Priya once told me that true love doesn't erase the past, it builds a bridge to the future. I never understood what she meant until now." As if on cue, a young mother approached their table, holding a sleeping toddler. "I had to thank you," she said softly. "Your program helped my daughter speak again after the accident. She says colors are her friends now." These moments had become their new measure of wealth, not in money or status, but in lives touched and hearts healed. The foundation had grown beyond their dreams, but they'd kept their promise, teaching classes themselves, staying connected to each child's journey. Back home in their art-filled apartment, a comfortable compromise between his penthouse and her simple flat, they added the collaborative canvas to their wall of memories. Their life together was its own kind of artwork, bold in some places, gentle in others, but always authentic. "What shall we paint next?" Anita asked, wrapping her arms around him. Raj looked at their shared canvas of life. The children they helped, the love they'd found, the healing they'd inspired. "I think," he said softly, "we're creating our masterpiece every day." That night, as the city lights twinkled below, they sat at their easels, painting side by side. Their styles had grown together, his precision complementing her freedom, her creativity inspiring his courage. Like their love, their art had become a beautiful blend of two souls finding their way home. And somewhere, Raj liked to think, Priya was smiling, knowing that her unfinished canvas of love had found its completion in ways she could never have imagined, but would have deeply understood.